3 days before Halloween, my phone buzzed with an itinerary. Not a question. The message from my daughter-in-law, Jessica, detailed exactly when I needed to pick up her 4 children, what I was required to feed them, and the precise neighborhood route I would walk them through. There was no greeting. There was certainly no "Are you free?" Just a list of demands masquerading as family tradition. I am Cynthia Morgan. I've lived alone since my husband passed away, and 7 years ago. My house is paid off. My pension is steady. And for a long time, I believed being a good mother meant being perpetually available. My son, David, had grown comfortable with that assumption. Jessica had turned it into a business model. I stood in my kitchen, reading the message again. They had secured tickets to an exclusive, adults-only Halloween gala downtown. The tickets cost a small fortune, which meant hiring a sitter for 4 kids was out of the question for their budget. Why pay for childcare when Cynthia is free? I stared at the glowing screen. The old me would have sighed, rearranged my quiet evening, and driven to the store to buy extra candy. But something had fundamentally shifted a few months ago when Jessica ignored my 60th birthday because she was too exhausted from a weekend getaway I had funded. I didn't cry. I didn't type out a furious reply demanding respect. I walked over to the calendar on my fridge, looked at October 31st, and realized I had absolutely nothing planned. I decided to change that immediately. I opened my laptop and found a beautiful, quiet bed and breakfast in the mountains, about 3 hours away. It had a stone fireplace, a spa, and 0 cell service if you didn't deliberately connect to the Wi-Fi. I booked 3 nights without hesitating. Then, I closed my laptop and waited to see if anyone would actually ask for my permission to use my time. The next afternoon, Jessica dropped by unannounced. She didn't ring the doorbell. She simply used the spare key I had given David for emergencies and walked right in. She carried a massive plastic bin overflowing with superhero capes, princess dresses, and cheap face paint. She dropped the heavy bin on my living room rug with a loud thud. The face paint needs to be applied exactly like the picture in the bag, she instructed, not even bothering to take her coat off. David is picking up the pizza on his way home, so you don't have to cook. Just make sure they are dressed and ready by 5. David walked in behind her, staring blankly at his phone. He barely looked up. Thanks, Mom. This gala is going to be amazing for my networking. I sat in my armchair, watching them closely. They moved around my living room like they owned the space, rearranging my throw pillows to make room for their bags. Neither of them paused to ask how I was doing. Neither asked if I had plans. The trick-or-treat route is in the group chat, Jessica added, checking her reflection in my hallway mirror. Don't let Tommy eat too much chocolate. He gets hyper. And make sure you get pictures of them in front of the Johnsons' haunted house setup. I nodded slowly, keeping my expression neutral. I see. Great. We'll drop them off at 3 on Halloween. Jessica turned and walked out. David finally looked up, offered a weak, distracted smile, and followed his wife. The moment the front door clicked shut, I walked over to the plastic bin. I didn't touch the costumes. Instead, I picked up my phone and called my friend Barbara. Barb. I smiled. Are you still up for a road trip this weekend? She laughed loudly through the receiver. I already packed my bags. Cynthia. The plan was officially in motion. Now, I just had to pack mine. The day before Halloween. The cracks in their perfect plan should have been obvious to them. But people only see what they want to see. I spent the morning running errands. I bought a new sweater, picked up some gourmet coffee for the trip, and stopped by the bank to withdraw some cash. Around noon, my phone rang. It was David. "Mom, Jessica wants to know if you can pick up the kids from school today. She's getting her nails done for the party." Usually, I would drop everything, rush to the elementary school, and navigate the chaotic pickup line. Today, I stood in the middle of a bookstore, casually browsing the fiction aisle. "I'm afraid I can't. David, I'm out running errands." There was a long, heavy pause on the line. "Errands. Can't you do them later? Jessica is already at the salon." "No," I replied calmly. "I cannot." I hung up before he could argue. It felt incredibly strange, yet deeply satisfying. For years, I had twisted my own life into knots to accommodate their poor planning. The moment I stopped, the sky didn't fall. I just had more time to read the back of a novel. Later that evening, Jessica sent a passive-aggressive text to the family group chat. "So stressed. Had to cancel my manicure because someone couldn't help with pickup." I didn't engage. I didn't apologize. I simply muted the chat. I went to my bedroom and pulled my overnight bag from the closet. I packed my new sweater, a good book, and my favorite skincare products. I placed the bag near the back door, out of sight. I walked past the plastic bin of costumes in the living room, leaving it exactly where Jessica had dropped it the day before. Tomorrow was Halloween. They had assumed my world revolved around them. They were about to learn how fast that world could turn. Halloween morning was crisp and bright. The neighborhood was already buzzing with excitement. Fake spiderwebs clinging to the bushes and carved pumpkins lining the porches. I woke up at 7, made myself a slow, quiet cup of coffee, and enjoyed the sunrise from my kitchen window. At 8:30, Barbara pulled into my driveway. I grabbed my overnight bag, locked the front door, and walked out. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a schedule. I just left. By 10 o'clock, Barbara and I were cruising down the highway, the autumn leaves blurring into a beautiful canvas of orange and gold. My phone sat in the cup holder, face up. At noon, the notifications began. "Jessica, don't forget to put sunscreen on them if you go to the park before trick-or-treating. Jessica. And remember, no gluten for Chloe today? David, Mom. Make sure the porch light is on when we drop them off." I read the messages as they popped up on the screen, feeling a strange sense of detachment. It was like reading a script for a play I had already quit. I didn't respond. I turned the volume down and let the music fill the car. We arrived at the Mountain Bed and Breakfast just after 2. The air smelled like pine needles and wood smoke. We checked into a gorgeous room overlooking a valley, unpacked our bags, and immediately headed down to the spa. At 2:45 p.m., my phone buzzed again. "Jessica, we're heading over in 15 minutes. Be ready." I slipped my phone into my robe pocket, lay back on the massage table, and closed my eyes. The time for being ready for them was over. I was finally ready for myself. The clock struck 3:15 p.m. I was sipping herbal tea on the spa balcony when the screen of my phone lit up with an incoming call from David. I let it ring. 2 minutes later, Jessica called. Then David again. By 3:30 p.m., the texts turned frantic. "Jessica, where are you? We are in your driveway. Jessica, Cynthia, open the door. The kids are getting restless." David, Mom. "Did you run to the store? We have to leave for the gala in an hour." I took another sip of my tea, savoring the warmth, and finally accepted the next incoming call from Jessica. She didn't say hello. She screamed into the receiver. "Where are you? The costumes are inside. The kids are acting crazy in the back seat, and we are going to be late. I kept my voice perfectly level. I am in the mountains, Jessica. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. What? What are you talking about? I'm enjoying my own vacation. Her voice disappeared. For a few seconds, there was absolute, stunned silence. Then, chaos erupted behind her. I could hear one of the kids crying loudly. David was shouting something in the background about the tickets. Jessica let out a sound of pure panic. "You can't be on vacation!" she shrieked. "You are watching the kids tonight. We gave you the schedule." "You sent me a schedule," I corrected gently. "You never asked if I was available. You never asked if I wanted to spend my Halloween managing your children so you could drink champagne. You just assumed." "Cynthia, you come back here right now. You are ruining our night." I smiled at the scenic mountain view. "Have a wonderful Halloween, Jessica." I ended the call. The silence that followed wasn't just peaceful. It was absolute freedom. The fallout was immediate and predictable. Less than a minute after I hung up on Jessica, David called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Mom, what is going on?" His voice was a messy blend of anger and desperation. "Jessica is hyperventilating in the driveway. We paid $600 for these tickets." "That sounds like a very expensive night to plan without securing a babysitter first," I replied. "You are the babysitter," he yelled. "You always do this. You always help us." "I used to help you," I corrected him, "because I loved spending time with my grandchildren. But lately, I am not a grandmother to you two. I am unpaid staff. You don't ask, David. You demand." "Mom, please. We can't find anyone on an hour's notice. Just come back." "I am 3 hours away. I suggest you take the kids home and order a pizza." "You are doing this to punish us." "I am doing this to rest." "Goodbye, David." I pressed the red button and immediately went into my phone settings. I didn't want to block them permanently, but I needed a quiet weekend. I turned on Do Not Disturb for their numbers. Barbara walked out onto the balcony, handing me a glass of red wine. She had heard enough of the conversation to understand the shift that had just happened. She clinked her glass against mine. To retirement. To actual retirement. I laughed. That evening, while Jessica and David presumably spent their Halloween sitting on their couch in expensive evening wear, managing 4 sugar-crazy children, Barbara and I ate steak by a roaring fire. I didn't feel a single ounce of guilt. I felt like I'd finally woken up. Waking up the next morning without the usual anxiety of fulfilling someone else's demands felt entirely foreign. I sat in the lodge dining room, enjoying a hot breakfast, when a thought crossed my mind. The boundary I set yesterday was just the beginning. The problem went much deeper than babysitting. For years, I had allowed my finances to be an extension of theirs. It started small, covering a grocery run here, paying for a sports camp there. But recently, it had become systemic. I pulled out my iPad and logged into my bank account. There it was, the family cell phone plan. 3 lines mine, David's, and Jessica's. $250 a month, automatically deducted from my pension. Then I checked my credit card statement. The auto renewal for their premium streaming services. The monthly subscription for the kids' meal delivery kits that Jessica insisted she needed. They treated my time as theirs because they treated my money as theirs. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't draft a dramatic email outlining everything they owed me. I simply clicked Manage Subscriptions. I transferred the phone plan billing responsibility to David's email address. I canceled the streaming services. I removed my credit card from the meal delivery account. It took less than 15 minutes. By removing myself from their financial safety net, I was removing their leverage. I closed the iPad and looked out at the mountain mist. I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it because a healthy relationship requires two independent adults, not a mother eternally subsidizing a son who couldn't even say, "Thank you." The trip suddenly felt lighter. The real test wouldn't be this weekend. It would be when I returned home, 3 days later. I pulled into my driveway. The neighborhood was quiet, the Halloween decorations looking a bit deflated in the November daylight. As I parked, I noticed David's car idling across the street. He had been waiting for me. I grabbed my overnight bag and walked toward the front porch. David scrambled out of his car and marched across the lawn. He looked exhausted and unkempt. "Mom," he started, his tone accusatory. "My phone service got suspended yesterday, and Jessica's meal kits got canceled." I unlocked the front door and pushed it open. I didn't invite him inside. I stood firmly on the threshold. "Yes, I transferred the billing to you. It's time you handle your own household expenses." "You didn't even warn us," he shouted, throwing his hands up. "You ruined our Halloween. You humiliated Jessica, and now you're cutting us off." I looked at my son, really looked at him. He wasn't a victim. He was a 35-year-old man upset that his mother had stopped doing his chores. "I didn't humiliate anyone," I said evenly. "I just stopped playing the role you assigned me. Now, before you leave, I need something from you." I held out my hand. He stared at it, confused. "What?" "My spare house key. The one Jessica used to drop off a bin of costumes without my permission." David blinked, stepping back. "Mom, you can't be serious. What if there's an emergency?" "If there's a real emergency, you know how to knock. The key." "David." He hesitated, anger flashing in his eyes, but my hand remained steady. Grumbling, he reached into his pocket, detached the brass key from his ring, and slapped it into my palm. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "No," I replied, slipping the key into my pocket. "This is my house." Just as I was about to close the door, Jessica's SUV screeched to a halt behind David's car. She slammed the door and stomped up the walkway, her face flushed with fury. "I hope you're happy with yourself," she yelled before she even reached the steps. "Do you have any idea how much money we lost on those tickets the kids were crying all night because they didn't get to go to the good neighborhood?" I stood tall on my porch, gripping the door handle. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "The children cried because their parents failed to plan," I stated. "And the money you lost was the price of assuming my life belongs to you." Jessica pointed a shaking finger at me. "You are their grandmother. It is your job to help out. Families support each other." "Families ask," I corrected her, my tone dropping to an icy calm. "Families respect boundaries. You don't want a mother-in-law, Jessica. You want a free employee." I quit. She opened her mouth to scream again, but I cut her off. I love my grandchildren. I will gladly spend time with them when it is arranged respectfully, in advance, and on my terms. But neither of you will ever dictate my schedule or my finances again. I looked at David. He was staring at the ground again, unable to defend his wife's entitlement or challenge my boundary. He knew I was right. "Please take the costume bin from the living room," I told him. "And then, I would like you both to leave. I have unpacking to do." David quietly walked past me, grabbed the heavy plastic bin, and walked back to his car. Jessica glared at me, her chest heaving, but without my reaction to feed off. Her anger had nowhere to go. She turned and stormed away. I stepped inside and locked the door. It has been 6 months since that Halloween. The immediate aftermath was exactly what you would expect. Jessica gave me the silent treatment, assuming I would eventually crack, call her in tears, and beg to see the grandchildren. She severely underestimated how much I enjoy the quiet. I didn't reach out. I didn't apologize. I simply went on with my life. I joined a local gardening club. Barbara and I booked a cruise to Alaska for next spring. I spent the money I used to waste on their streaming services and cell phone bills to upgrade my backyard patio. Eventually, the silence broke, but not from my end. David called a week before Christmas. He was nervous, stumbling over his words, asking if I would be willing to host the kids for a few hours so he could shop. He actually asked, "I would love to see them," I replied. "You can drop them off at noon, and I need them picked up by 4. When he arrived, Jessica stayed in the car. David walked the kids to the door, handed me a small gift bag, and actually thanked me for my time. It wasn't perfect, and the blind warmth we once had was gone, replaced by a careful, polite distance. But I preferred the distance over the blatant disrespect. I realized something profound sitting on my new patio that evening. You don't need a lawyer, a screaming match, or a dramatic trap to win back your life. You just need to stop moving out of the way. When you stop cushioning the fall for entitled people, they finally hit the ground. And once they do, they realize your presence in their life was a privilege, not a given right. I am Cynthia Morgan, and for the first time in years, my time is entirely my own.